Ni hao y'all. Welcome back to West China Tea. We're here today to talk about serving tea. We're in a beautiful tea house right now. People come here 6 days, 7 days of the week and drink tea together, and it's this beautiful experience. And I see people on the internet a lot of the time who maybe don't have a tea house around where they live, and they will say, oh, I wish I had a tea house. Well, you can have a tea house, because a tea house is not a place where you drink tea. A tea house is people drinking tea together. So if you serve tea and people drink it with you, then you do in fact have a tea house. I like to say that when we say you're drinking tea by yourself, you've got a tea room, that you do that in your tea room, or what's happening is that you're the room, really, where the tea is coming into. The tea is the guest and you're the room. But when you have multiple rooms together and the same guest is walking through all of them, that's a house. When you combine all those different rooms, and that's what we're doing when we have a bunch of different people together, all sharing their perspective, sharing space, sharing tea, is that we have a tea house. And it's not about the building, it can be outside. In fact, that's one of the best places possible to have tea and to have a tea house and to share tea. So I'm gonna share a little bit today about how do we serve tea to people. We're not gonna talk about how to steep tea and how to pour tea, which I talk about in other episodes and we have classes about and has been discussed at length by us and a lot of other people, the skills involved in pouring tea well. But this is about how do we serve tea to others. A lot of people who maybe have been doing this for years even, but they've only ever done it by themselves, have expressed to me that they feel self-conscious, that they don't know how. Maybe they don't think of themselves as a person with great social skills or with great public speaking skills, and they feel intimidated by the prospect of serving tea and representing someone else's culture. They want to do it respectfully, and they want to do it in a way that feels like it's conveying what they love about the culture as well. And so I'm just going to share some tips today for how do we serve tea to groups of people, especially big groups of people, because that's a great way to share culture and that's a great way to share tea. And it's what naturally happens when you're serving tea, is you'll get bigger and bigger groups of people. And it can be very technically challenging and challenging on other levels to hold space for that many people. So today we're going to dive in a little bit with that. I'm going to start making some tea for myself. So I'll reiterate, we're not here to talk about the techniques of pouring tea well. Let's assume you've already got that, or you're in the process of developing that. This is what do we do after the tea is poured, and how does it get into people's mouths? I'm going to make myself a little bit of a smoke bomb here, which has nothing to do with the episode. It's just the tea that I feel like drinking. Big fan of this tea, and my little Shanghai one. So we're not talking about the practice of pouring the tea itself and making it well, but the foundation is the same. And the foundation is to pay attention. I always tell people the right way to pour tea is to pay attention. The wrong way to pour tea is to not pay attention. And that starts, what are we paying attention to? Well, let's start with the water. Where is the water from? Is it tap water? Is the water good? If you want to be respectful to your tea, then use good water. That's an important part of the process. You can't make good tea without good water. The water in the kettle, are you keeping it hot? Is it getting cold? Are you controlling the temperature? Or is the temperature just being allowed to dip down below where the tea is going to steep well? If you have a lot of people, I often will, this is what we do at the tea house, we'll have two kettles, and one's hot and one's getting hot. And as soon as one is empty and gets refilled and is getting hot, we've got another hot one ready to go. So there's no lapse in the amount of time that the water is accessible. And so our water service is uninterrupted. And then from the water itself, obviously, to the tea, keep your mind in the pot. I always say to people, keep your mind in the pot, keep your mind with the leaves. Whatever you're doing, whatever you're saying, whatever you're being present with, first and foremost, be present with the leaves in the pot. And if you can't talk and serve tea at the same time, just don't talk, just serve tea. That's great. You're being a great host if you're just focusing on serving the tea. And so you're always going to want to keep your mind on the leaves in the pot. And from the pot to the gong dao bei, in this style of tea service that I'm doing right now, where I'm using a gong dao bei, the justice cup. What do I mean by that? Is the tea sitting in here getting cold while people's cups are empty? If I'm serving a big group of people and I'm worried that people won't get a full cup of tea, let's say I've got 15 people sitting at a single tea table, I might double up my steepings, where I'll take 2 steepings of the same tea and combine them. And now I've got enough water and tea to pour everyone a full cup of tea. And you go through the tea faster, but that's just the nature of having more people at the table. And you're combining steeping, so you're not getting that pure character of the single steeping, but that's just the nature of when you've got a certain group of people and you have a certain size vessel, then it's helpful to have the ability to do 2 steepings at once like that. And then from the tea in the Gong Bei to the tea in the cups, first thing to think about is, does every cup have tea? If there's an empty cup on the table, fill it with tea. If you don't have tea to fill it with, then make some tea and fill the cup with that tea. So making sure that everyone's cup stays full, that's part of being a good host. Making sure that there's not a bunch of leaves in people's cups. And if there are, give them some water and allow them to rinse it out, allow them to pour it into a bowl or onto the cha pan or wherever. And I always recommend switching directions. So I just went right to left. Maybe next time I'll go left to right. And that's to make sure that this person who got served last this time, and because they got served last, look, I've got nice full cups. There's still plenty of tea. Here's how much tea is in my Gong Bei still. I could serve even more people with those 2 combined infusions. But making sure that the person who's getting served last isn't getting served last every time, so that you're switching it up. And then from the tea in the cups to the tea in the people, making sure that the tea is healthy for people, making sure that, of course, it's good tea, but making sure that you are being hygienic, that people's cups aren't getting mixed up, people aren't using used cups, that you're not using your tongs to touch cups that have been drank from, because then you're cross-contaminating them, only using your tongs for clean cups and making sure that the used cups are being put away so they don't get accidentally used again or accidentally cross-contaminate something. And so really, when I say be mindful, those are the things we want to be mindful about. And I actually need one of these cups because I don't have my cup over here. I'm excited to drink some tea. I actually I had a lot of tea earlier, but I didn't get to make any tea. So to reiterate, being mindful of the water, being mindful of the tea, the leaves, being mindful of the tea in the Gong Bei, being mindful of the tea in the cups, and being mindful of the tea itself. Did you wash your hands? That's another thing about being hygienic and making sure that you're not making anyone sick. So those are what I call like the hard or technical aspects of serving tea to a group of people. Making sure there's enough water, there's enough tea, that you're being a good host vis-a-vis the service of the tea. But a lot of tea serving and being a good tea server is what I call the soft aspects. And those are going to be more social aspects, more interpersonal, psychological, emotional aspects. And a lot of them have to do with how people are going to be interacting in a space together, drinking tea. So I want to talk about a few of those. And they also encompass what someone is learning when they're drinking tea. That's another soft aspect that's very, very important because this is new to a lot of people. And I guess the instruction that I'm giving today is kind of assuming a population of guests who are new to this process. And so when we're serving tea to people who are brand new to it, a really great way to bring them into the circle and to bring them into the experience is to tell them about the tea. Introduce yourself, but also introduce the tea. If you don't know them, introduce yourself. If you do know them, introduce the tea, just like you're introducing 2 friends that don't know each other yet. You introduce the tea. What's the name of this tea? What's the story of this tea? Where was it grown? How was it processed? If you have that information. Even if you don't have all that information, there's your story with the tea. It could be, my friend gave me this tea. I know nothing about it, but my friend who's really into tea gave me this tea. And so we're going to drink it. And that's fine. That's the story of that particular tea for you. But whatever it is that you like about that tea, whatever it is that you're curious about that tea, share that because that's part of your connection and why you enjoy it. And so being able to convey that to people is going to help convey your passion and your interest to them as well. And then the same goes for Gong Fu Cha or Chinese tea or whatever type of tea you're doing. This goes for Japanese tea. This goes for Indian tea. Whenever you're sharing tea, if you feel compelled to share tea with someone, that means that tea is important to you. It's something that you enjoy and you want to share it with people that you care about, or even people that you don't know. And being able to share that aspect is very important when you're wanting to be able to convey that experience to people. So share about the tea itself, share about tea culture, whatever that means to you. For example, Gong Fu Cha. What is it? What do you know about it? Even if you don't know that much about it, you do know something about it because you're sitting here doing it. You could explain what the names of the vessels are, or why we do things the way we do them, or what you're doing, what a tea pet is. Those are all things that make people interested in tea, that help people see the depth of tea culture. When you're serving tea, it's also very helpful to give some instruction. So like what I just did it all in one move. But when people sit down, you introduce the tea, you tell them a little bit about what's going on so they have some context for it, and then you tell them what to do. For example, sometimes people don't know that they're supposed to drink the tea when it's in front of them. They think they're supposed to wait for everybody else to drink tea. And we don't need them to do that. People drink at different rates. So everyone giving people permission to drink the tea when it's ready by instructing them how to taste the tea. You pick up your cup and you smell it first. Then you slurp it. People need to be given permission to slurp. If they can't slurp, then they're gonna have to sit there waiting for their tea to cool down a bunch, because slurping makes it way easier to drink hot tea. Also, it enhances the enjoyment of drinking the tea. And a lot of people have been taught that it's rude, which in some cultures it's rude, but in other cultures, including Chinese culture and other East Asian cultures, it's not considered rude at all. In fact, it's part of the experience of enjoying something. And so giving people permission to slurp, and then I could tell them to exhale through their nose after they swallow. Exhale through your nose. So smell, slurp. After you swallow, exhale through your nose. And that's called retronasal olfaction. You can drop that little tidbit too if you want, but you don't have to. And I find that that's good because it just brings people into their bodies, gets people focusing on their sense of smell in two different ways, both the inhale and the exhale. And it gets people to notice, wow, it's different. The inhale is different than the exhale. That's kind of cool. I didn't notice that. This thing is giving me something new and interesting to experience. And then people have an in. They're like, oh, I'm in. I know how this works. I don't feel like I'm lost in this environment because I've been given instructions. I know the process for how to taste tea. And it's not important that they do it. It's just important that they feel included and they feel like they've been given knowledge that helps them be part of this community. Not that it's even necessary, but people look for that. And then another fun one is when you pour tea for someone and they thank you, you can let them know that they can thank you by tapping their fingers. And that's another little like, oh, this is this cultural thing that I'm learning. I'm in the group now because I see other people doing it, and now I know that I do it too, and I can do that, and I can share my gratitude without having to vocalize, because it's awkward to say thank you every time someone pours you a little cup of tea because they're probably talking about something else and you're interrupting the conversation, which is why we like to do that. But you can give people that little tidbit of knowledge, and then they feel more and more included in what's going on. And then another one I love to do is when you finish the last sip, smell the empty cup, and then wave it around, smell it again. And let them keep doing that. Let them wave it around for a couple times anyway, and keep smelling it and see how that fragrance evolves. That's called the cold fragrance or the cup fragrance. And that's another thing to get people into their bodies and to get people into the mindset, like there's a lot to this. This is this very simple thing, it's just leaves and water, but actually there's a lot going on that I didn't expect. And so that's a great way. Those are great ways to instruct people, to educate people, in addition to telling them about the tea itself and the culture itself, giving them homework assignments, activities that they can do so that they're actively participating. And I want to point out that it's first of all, you don't need to feel obligated to entertain people. So we're talking right now about educating people, which for me means helping them feel at ease, helping them understand what's going on, insofar as you understand it. And if you're trying to serve tea to people, you do understand it on at least a foundational level. So educating people enough so that they understand what they're doing and what you're doing, and that they know something about the tea they're drinking, even if it's minor, and that they feel included in what's going on. But it's not your job to create a conversation. You're not a facilitator. You are not an entertainer. Your job when you're serving tea is to serve the tea, not necessarily to serve the people drinking the tea. By serving the tea and staying focused on the tea and not getting distracted from that, you're doing your best job of being a host for those people, because you are doing the thing that people are there for. You don't need to be the entertainment. The tea is the main event. The tea itself is the main event. If people are sitting and they're able to drink tea and you're putting your utmost attention into making that tea and everyone's just sitting there silently, then that's fine. I find a lot of people are afraid of silence, but I love when the tea table goes silent. It's beautiful. I love when it happens spontaneously, not enforced silence, but the voluntary silence that comes with feeling at ease and being really in the experience of drinking and enjoying the tea. And so holding space for that. And then I always say, like I said earlier, if you can't talk and serve tea at the same time, if you find that you're getting too distracted by the conversation and people's cups are sitting empty and the tea is getting cold, like it is right now for me, I only have just me that's drinking tea right now, so it's okay. But when you are able to do all of that and keep all those cups full and keep the tea hot and really be focused on the tea and make the tea as good as you can, and you can have a conversation, great. But if you feel like your ability to converse and stay focused on the conversation is detracting from your ability to focus on the making and serving the tea, then you can just be silent, and that's okay. And that's actually, you're doing a good job. You're being a good host. You're being a good tea server because you are in service of the tea. And if you're in authentic connection with the tea, then the people will be in authentic connection with the tea and with each other and with you and with their experience. So that's an important one, is don't feel the need to entertain and don't feel the need to converse. But when conversation is happening, it's also valuable to help to curate that conversation in a way that steers it towards accessible topics and equitable participation. And what I mean by that is sometimes two people at a tea table are both really into some particular niche topic, maybe some very niche fandom or, crypto, people who talk a lot about here, or human design. There's different topics that people can get really, really into. And two people across the table from each other can easily carry the whole conversation away towards this very niche subject. Or some people are very extroverted and outgoing, and or very articulate, or just speak really loudly. And it can be counterproductive to a real organic conversation emerging. And there's ways of steering the conversation without reprimanding someone, because we do want that person's expression. We do want those people's expression for whom expression comes naturally and easily, but we also want to make space for the expression of people who might not be as assertive in discourse. And we can do that by drawing people's attention back to the tea. You're the server, you're the host. At any moment, you can reclaim the mic. That is your right, because you're here to facilitate the drinking of the tea, and I know you say you're not a facilitator, but you're definitely here to make the tea and to serve the tea. And you're also here to educate people about the tea. And so when you speak as the person, don't abuse this, you shouldn't dominate the conversation. If anything, err to the side of talking less and focusing more on the tea and let people have the conversation. But if you need to help the conversation to be healthier, then you can retrieve that mic and you can draw people's attention back to the tea. This is not a trick. Really do draw people's attention back to the tea. There's always something else to say. You can pass it around to smell again. You can point out a note that you've noticed. You can share a memory that you have about that tea, or you can say, let's drink a new tea. What tea do people want to drink? If you see someone has been struggling to enter the conversation because they want to say something but they can't get a word in, body language, for example, you've seen someone kind of leaning forward trying to get started in the conversation, but they keep getting cut off. You can call on that person. You can be like, what type of tea do you want to drink? Or where are you from? How did you end up here? If there's someone you already know, you can connect with them about what they think about the tea, or something that's happened mutually that you know about them that's not too niche. But you can always take back the mic, and then you can always give it to somebody. And also while being respectful of people who might not want to talk and they just want to sit there and drink tea, and just reading the room, just making sure that people have the opportunity if so they want. And then finally, what kind of tea do you serve when you're serving a group of people, especially a big group of people? Well, I'm making this smoke bomb here. I like this one a lot because it's a really, really strong tea and it lasts a long time. And that's something I'll look for in teas that I'm serving to big groups is teas that last a long time, because a tea that lasts a long time when you're serving it by yourself will last longer than another tea when you're serving it for a group. And oftentimes that's the struggle when you're serving a large group of people, is making sure that there's enough tea for everybody. You oftentimes are limited by the size of our vessel, which is why we have 2 kettles. That's why we are pouring multiple steepings in the gong dabe, like we talked about earlier. Another thing that I like to tell people when they ask that question, what teas do I serve, is focus on teas that you like. Smoke bomb is a tea that I like. I said in the beginning, I just really like drinking this tea, and I chose it even though it doesn't really have much to do with the episode itself, but because I just wanted to drink it while I was talking about tea. And so a tea that you have that connection with, that you have that affinity for, maybe that you have a lot of experience with, whatever tea that you have a relationship with, the deeper your relationship with the tea, the more impactful that tea will be to the people who are drinking it, assuming that you are staying focused and attentive while you're serving the tea, and that you're being in that space of appreciation for the tea when you're serving it. That will be the best tea that you can serve. And it doesn't matter what type of tea it is, right? And even if people might not like the taste of a particular tea, the experience will be enhanced by the fact that you love that tea and you feel connected to that tea. So, long answer, tea that you love and have a connection with. Short answer, aged white tea. That is the tea that I will generally serve to a large group of people whose tea preferences are unknown. And I don't have time to have a whole discourse about it. If I've got 15 people there, they're all talking to each other, it's Halloween, people are doing whatever, and I want to serve a tea that everyone's gonna be able to enjoy, I'll serve an aged white tea because everybody always likes aged white tea. Another one is shu pu'er. And the reason those two, I mentioned them in the same breath, is because like this one, this little mandarin orange shu pu'er, they are teas that don't get bitter. And they're big teas. They got big flavors. The aged whites, there's the honey and there's the dates and there's the sweetness and there's that kind of tannic mouthfeel. And then the pu'ers, there's the earthiness and the earthiness and the earthiness and the darkness of the tea that it really gets people's attention, and it conveys, wow, this is different than what I think of. This isn't what I'm used to drinking as tea. This is something else because it tastes so different, it looks, smells, feels so different. So I like to start with those. And also, again, they don't get bitter. So let's say you're not as focused like I am right now as you could be, then it's okay if you forget about them for a second. Don't try to do it. Don't do it on purpose. But if it happens, it's not going to be the end of the world. You're not going to get an undrinkably bitter tea. I'm going to try and give this a little crack. There we go. Crack that. And then also teas that are on that same vein, teas that are very fragrant, teas that get people's attention are really good. So oolongs, for example, low oxidation oolongs here at the tea house, duck is a favorite, jade, tieguanyin, root mountain, zhangping, shuixian, those are all favorite starter teas for people because the extreme floral or fruity fragrances of those low oxidation oolongs. Taiwanese oolongs are great for this. That's some of the first teas that I got into when I was starting my journey, was low oxidation Taiwanese Gaoshan oolongs, the high mountain oolongs from Taiwan. Super abundant floral fragrance, really, and very mild taste that's not going to be bitter. Because, bitter is part of the taste of tea, but we don't drink or eat bitter things that much in America. And so people aren't necessarily used to that. And that's a lot of times what people are afraid of when they're thinking about the taste of tea. They might have been traumatized by drinking some really bitter tea. So going back to teas that don't get bitter and teas that are fragrant, also including this little mandarin orange shu pu'er. It has that orange fragrance. It's something for people's palate to grab onto. They might feel a little bit, adrift when they're thinking about what does the tea taste like. Well, they don't have a vocabulary for it. Maybe they're feeling self-conscious about not knowing more about tea or knowing what to say. But then you've got this, and we're like, wow, I can taste the orange. I can smell the orange. Great. Now they're paying attention. They're getting into their body. They're feeling like they're getting it. They are getting it. They're getting an aspect of that, even though it might not be the essential aspect of the feeling and the taste of the tea. It's something that their mind can grab onto. The same is true of jasmine tea. People love jasmine tea. Chinese people love jasmine tea. I love jasmine tea. And it's a great tea to serve to people right off the bat because it has that beautiful jasmine fragrance. It's very pronounced. It gets people into their bodies, into their nose, and it gets people to a place where they're enjoying the experience of drinking the tea, and their body is learning to associate the taste and the feeling of tea with something good. And so those are great starter teas. That was literally the first tea I ever bought and had was a little jar of jasmine pearls. So, keeping things accessible. And I'd say that I want to end with probably of beyond just paying attention to the tea itself. One of the most important things that I find is being down to earth, being humble, and keeping things accessible and relatable. There's a tendency for people to want to gatekeep around different things, anything really at all. And Chinese tea culture is not orthodox. It's not about lineages. It's not about doing things in a particular way. It's about being present for the process of what you are doing. It doesn't matter how much you know, and it doesn't matter how much experience you have. It just matters that you're present for the experience and helping people to feel at ease, welcome, and like they are not being judged for what they know or do not know about tea. Not only is that how you build community, and and get people to a place where they can truly enjoy and appreciate what you're doing for them when you serve them tea, but it's what people do in China. That is the spirit of Chinese tea culture, is welcoming, accessible. It doesn't matter if you're a stranger off the street. If you see people drinking tea, they might very well invite you to drink tea with them, and they don't even care if you can speak their language. You might be a foreigner who does not speak Chinese, but you're still welcome at people's tea tables in China, and that's part of the beauty of tea and what makes it such a great vehicle for growing community and building community and making connections among people. Thank you all so much. It's been a great episode. I look forward to seeing you next time on Gong Fu Cha.